Okay, so this is a review for Swamp Thing by Brian K. Vaughn. I have the first volume in trade, and I read the second volume on my Kindle. Um, I professed it many times on this channel. I'm a fan of the Swamp Thing character. That being said, I, I I need to background a little bit. I have been spending the last couple of years reading a lot of single issues post the Alan Moore run. I've covered pretty much everything from Rick Veitch, who was the guy who came in after Alan Moore, on up until Charles Soule stuff. Um, and so I was just trying to read in between Moore and Snyder to try and catch up and get the back history of the Vertigo stuff. Um, I've read the Mark Millar stuff. I've read this, and then there's a little bit of Andy Diggle and another guy named Joshua Dreischart who did another series after this. So until then, until I get to that, I've read pretty much every Swamp Thing comic that there is out there. Um, and I can say that in all that, there's been some good stuff in there. Like I think Nancy Collins, who wrote the run before Grant Morrison and Mark Millar came on, is a fucking criminally underrated run. If you get a chance to find that in single issues, jump on it. It's really good stuff. Um, but in the midst of all this, I can easily say that this is that Brian K. Vaughn's is probably one of the worst fucking comics that I've ever read. Um, the Vertigo stuff is very continuity heavy. You could probably jump into this, and because it's not really following Swamp Thing, it's more following his daughter, and I'll explain that a little bit in a minute. You could jump into this and be fine with it, uh, only up to a point. So, the thing with Tefe, Alec and Abby have a daughter who there's an entire complicated history about how she came to be, but let's just suffice to say that Abby wanted a child, so Swamp Thing and John Constantine temporarily swapped souls so that he could use Constantine's body to father a child. There was some, there was some, uh, there was a few circumstances that were attached around that on top of the fuckery that was already there. But basically, they produced a human child who has elemental powers, but she also has demonic blood in her veins. And essentially, that she is one of the most powerful creatures in all of existence. And the story is kind of following her and her deciding what she wants to do with who she is, and why she is the way she is, and what she's going to do with her life when she's kind of reached the big decision making point. The first volume here is a lot of setup, and it's 9 issues. I think it was 20 something issues altogether that Vaughn wrote. The first half of this is easily some of the worst comic reading that I've ever had. Now, this is a Brian K. Vaughn who was just kind of starting out. This is not the one who wrote Why the Last Man, which I heard was, some really good stuff. Um, and he's not the saga writer here. He's just kind of, this is when he was starting out and he's trying to find his writing skills. And this really shows in being some bad writing. Basically, what we got is that Tefe, she got to be too powerful and she went a little bit crazy when she was a kid. So, with Constantine's help for her parents, they kind of took away her memory and replaced her with a girl that was already in a coma, or used her to replace that girl, and she just kind of lives not knowing who she was. Um, Something happens in the first issue. She snaps. She kills a couple of the people that she was friends with in high school, and she decides to go on a road trip and kind of just find who she is. Um, I guess really the best way that I can describe this entire run is a really fucked up but boring fucked up version of Catcher in the Rye. Um, Tefe is, like I said, the most powerful thing in all of existence, according to this story. Um, and she doesn't really know how to interact with people. She doesn't know how to be good. She doesn't know how to be bad. Um, she's just trying to find herself. And it's so fucking boring. Um, there are a couple of extremes in this that I really went into disliking her character, especially one to where she's been communicating with what's left of the Parliament of Green, and she's kind of given a messed up choice in between saving a burning forest or letting a human family die, and she decides to let the Green die, and she's so enraged that she made that choice that she makes the father choose in between killing his wife or killing his daughter, and maybe under well thought out circumstances that could be more captivating reading, but here it's just really exploitative stuff. It's shock value. It's not good. Um, and a lot of people who have read this just because Brian K. Vaughn's name is on it really couldn't make it past the first one. I did, and it kind of gets to a point to where it does pick up once you start rolling into the teen issues. Um, and I mean the teen issues, not the teen issues that she has as a character in this. Um, things pick up a little bit, but it comes to a really messed up head. Um, Basically, there are two characters that are following her around in this too, and they're a little bit more interesting than she is. One is Barnabas, who is an Inuit, and he's kind of her arcane in this story. He never really becomes an enemy of hers, but he represents the temptation to kind of give in to the evil side of her because he is a fucked up individual himself, and he's a little bit of a sociopath. The other character is Pilate, and he's a more interesting character, and he's more of a benevolent follower of her. Um, in this first volume, two good things in this first volume that I can say that I liked. One is a backstory about Pilate from when he was a kid and he watched the Challenger take off, uh, the rocket take off, and it blew up, and it really changed a lot of the dreams that he had about uh, the world in his childhood. The second thing is that Abby decides to put her use to her powers to communicate with plants into a more proactive fashion when she comes across a murder mystery at an apartment complex in New York. And that exchange of powers, it didn't make this any easier, but it was at least something that was conveyed in a really good sense. Um, but aside from all that, this first volume is a bore. The second volume does pick up a little bit, but it's kind of like, the best way to describe this is kind of like what the Sarah Connor Chronicles was. It's not until the tail end of everything to where it gets interesting. All the forces that come after her play their hands, they're defeated, and there's kind of a choice at the end of it. The final issue is Pilate kind of weighing in, and he kind of goes back and explains that he read the poem The Tiger, or Tiger Tiger, I don't remember which it is, in an English class when he was in school. And the character in the poem gets to the end of it, and he has a choice between taking a certain path or taking another path, and that will define what he does with himself. The problem is that the Pilate kind of laments that the story gives the reader blue balls at the end of it because you don't know what the choice is that the character made. And that's kind of the cop-out for this entire run. Tefe gets to the end of it. She makes her choice. What it is, we don't know. I know that she will pop back in on the next run. So I can at least find that out. Not that it's going to mean anything much, I don't think. But if you're looking to get into Swamp Thing outside of Alan Moore, outside of Charles Soule or Scott Snyder, take a chance with the Mark Millar stuff. It might be a little bit more interesting for you. As for this, though, bottom line is, do not buy this. don't even waste time reading it. Especially since it's called Swamp Thing and Alec is barely in the story at all. Um, Fuck that story. That's all I can say. Don't bother with it.